morning, everybody. It's Grizzly once again from coast to coast and around the world. Do I have a special guest today? Someone that you would never expect. She's backstage right now, waiting to come on. She's from the Dark Outpost. Penny Shepard. Let's bring her on and see what she has to say. Penny, how are you doing?
Really good. How are you doing this morning?
Oh, not too bad. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and we look forward to seeing you on the Dark Outpost next Thursday.
Absolutely. So, what are we going to talk about today? You're very interesting.
Indeed. When I started writing, I was going to write my life story. After I left my husband in San Diego, I went and I stayed with my brother. Then later on, I found out who my brother actually was, who my brothers actually are.
Ooh.
And when I got out there, I was going to various churches. I went to Willow Creek it's in Barrington, Illinois, and then also to Harvest Bible Chapel, which is in Elkin. And then both of those pastors, when I started researching them, were very bad people. Bill Hybels retired early due to sexual allegations of sexual impropriety within the church. The entire elder board resigned. Also, there were pictures in the church, Chris, that there were renderings of one of my brothers in the renderings. Okay, now when I say renderings, these are they're artworks that were created. They're not prints. Somebody painted these things. So there was a series of paintings on. You go up these stairs, and there's these black couches where people can read their Bibles and stuff, right? And there's a sequence of 3 paintings there. Well, I'd been in that church for like almost a year, but then after I was made homeless because the CIA is my actual family, which I didn't know because they're covert.
Right.
I went back to the church and I started taking pictures of the pictures, and I started seeing the covert satanic factions that were in these pictures. Okay. So this one day I'm looking up and I'm like, that's John. That's my brother John. I said, I'd know him for 1,000 years. And at the time I didn't believe in reincarnation. But later on I was like, that's weird. I didn't say 5 years or 10 years or 15 years. And then in the prayer and worship center, and I have pictures of these, there's a life-size rendering of the same person in a COVID mask, by the way, Chris. I saw this in 2016. And same rendering of the person sitting on the right-hand side, like Jesus is depicted sitting on the right-hand side of God, right-hand side, in front of this very interesting multi-charactered individual who, when you look at it on one aspect, you can't tell, is that a girl or a guy? I was like, is that me with Athena? Because I've been in music all my life. And in one of the bands that I was in under my first handler, Darrell, was called Big Business. They made me this multicolored silk thing that I tied on, and then I would wear a white dress underneath it, and it had all the colors of the people in the band. Well, that's what this thing is, multicolored. I was like, that's weird. On one hand, when you look at it, it looks like a woman with a ponytail. Then when you look at it this way, it looks like a man. And so I took pictures of it. Well, later on, I took the color out of the pictures, and it's a gray alien.
Ooh.
And this part where you see John on this side, you take all those, take the color out of that. I simply just decolorized it. I didn't alter it. Okay. There's a bigger gray looking at this gray in a prayer and worship center in a mega church. What were they worshiping, Chris?
That's crazy.
Yeah. And so my mom was an artist. I spent my life showing, when I was younger, I spent my younger years showing her artwork, but I was erased. So I found out when I left my husband in March of 2016. He's since died, thank you God, because he was very evil. And he tortured me for about 25 years. and he was a former police officer. He was a sergeant at Carlsbad PD in San Diego. His family were a family of, his mother was a nurse. His sister was a nurse. His dad was a deputy sheriff. He was there for so long. He probably helped Moses Luce write the chart for San Diego. He rode on horseback. So he also established the Old Town Sheriff's Museum. He was a historian for the Old Town Sheriff's Museum, and he got awards from, I don't know if it was Sheriff Duffy, but so a family that was in law enforcement for many, many years, and not a good family. I remember at one point that two of my stepson and his cousin had blamed the grandfather for molesting them. Now, at the time, I was like, why would you say that? Because I was naive. Now I know that it was true. Via all the things that I know. I found out after 60 years that all the people that I'd been involved with, they all knew one another, but I never knew that they knew one another for like 60 years. So when I left my husband, he said to me, you will be made homeless, you will get arrested, and you'll get thrown in a crazy house. And all those things happened to me. And they happened to me because of who I am and what I was finding out. I went back and I was to represent an individual when I went out to Illinois. I was asked by Alan Gressick, who is a prolific pianist, very nice individual, very good friend and intimate contact. And he asked me at one point to be his manager. And he worked at the Green Mill in Chicago, still does. He said he had touch deprivation when he was a child. He's somewhat of a savant in the musical category. So he has his own orchestra. And the first time I met him on a dating app. It was called Zeusk. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but it's called Zeusk. And I was guided there, and he had this little thing that said, hey, please stop by my site. So I was like, well, this sounds awful. So I stopped by, and he says he's a pianist, but he's not a pianist, Chris. He's not a pianist. He's he's an orchestra leader. It's his orchestra. So he invites me down to go to the Green Mill, and this is all in Chicago. Mm-hmm. Green Mill's on Broadway, and I try to get people to come with me, and he says, you can be my date, and I say, well, I'll be your wingman. So I go down. I said, there is no +1. He says, I'll make it a +1, leave it at the door. I go, there is no +1. It's just me. Nobody's coming. As I walk in, and I'm the only one coming in, there's a camera set up on the sidewalk. And I had just learned how to walk and talk all over again because I'd been, for the past time with my husband, he was a drug addict. He doctor shot me. They falsely diagnosed me. They drugged me. I also had at one point carpal tunnel surgery because at this point I wasn't taking any kind of substances whatsoever. When I was on the road, I didn't go see doctors. If I went to go see somebody, I went to go see a homeopath or a naturopath. So because his family, I was given to this individual after I left my brother John, who was my agent. When I start researching, that's why I was told you're going to end up homeless. You're going to end up locked up in a crazy house and arrested because I was being followed because they had given me to my last handler. We marry our handlers, so I married this individual, and he was a morphine addict. And when I first met him, I said, look, I don't want to have anything to do with anybody that's doing drugs or drinking. I don't want that in my life. And he swore, no, I don't do any drugs. And he was addicted to Percocet at the time, but he hid it from me. And then subsequently, he became more and more addicted to these pain meds. Then when I got carpal tunnel in 2004, he started taking me to all these doctors. They started drugging me. They started putting me on copious amounts of antidepressants. And, I'd been with that before. My first husband was a psychologist. I'd never been on any kind of medication, but he also was an alcoholic. And he did drugs, not recreationally, but on a consistent basis, and smoked pot. So he had me smoking pot on a daily basis for like 10 years. Well, pot is an MKUltra drug. I never procured anything. I will just say it was foisted on me. And so he used that to keep me MKUltra compliant. I'd suggest to people, if you're, pot does have medicinal purposes for PTSD. CBD oil is an extraordinary. I know autistic children who have been using CBD. It's a wonderful thing. I don't have anything against it. I just caution people. Number one, you don't know if you're buying it on the street. You have no idea what's in there. It could have something in there to
Right.
kill you. And secondly, it's literally used. I prefer, if I were talking to somebody smoking pot, they're going to be chilled. They're not going to be out there unless they sprinkle it with something like PCP, and then that's a deadly combination. But I very rarely have seen friends that smoke pot that are violent. It's more of a chilling, calming thing. So I don't have anything against it. And but for myself, I do not imbibe any kind of drugs or any kind of medication. They literally gave me a chemical lobotomy. I ended up suicided in San Diego via Omega protocol. Last thing I remember talking about was Marilyn Monroe. I woke up in the hospital, chained hands and feet to the bed for a month. And there was this person in that hospital in San Diego that later on I was like, that wasn't my doctor, because my doctor was, he was Asian, but this guy looked like Ishi from World War One or World War II. And I'm like, how would I even know what Ishi looked like? Because I'm 64, I'm not 104. How would I know what Ishi looked like? This guy was in a general's uniform in a civilian hospital overseeing my care. That's odd, right?
That's very odd.
So later on, I find out who I am. I find out why I'm an enemy of the state, because I'm declared enemy of the state when I leave my husband. The protocol for MK Ultras, when they start getting their memories back, is to assassinate their character, that's why they arrest you, falsely arrest you, to throw you in a crazy house. I was in a locked facility for a year, and there was nothing wrong with me. But here's what happened. When I was at that church that I told you about, and I have pictures of these pictures, something happened. I was looking at my phone. I was talking to my sister-in-law, and my phone shook like this, and I looked, and there was an image on it, and I was literally under MK Ultra. Now, that means that you're compliant and you follow suggestions, not necessarily orders, right? But suggestions. So the suggestion was, hey, you can go over to Robin's house, who was my niece. And I'm like, but my brother told me I couldn't go there. And she says, oh, no, you can go there. So I take off my shoes, I pack up my computer, I drive to her house, and I'm full on under MK Ultra. And then they say, oh, well, she's not at home. And I'm like, but you told me to go to her house, right? Then they send me to 2 other places. The third place they send me to, my niece says, oh, why don't you just come in here and get a checkup? I'm like, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm physically fine. I was homeless at the time, but I was staying at the church pretty much during the day and then sleeping for a couple hours in my car. I'm not a violent person. I'm not a confrontive person. And I had pretty much stayed away from the family. Anyway, I go in, I get checked in. They take my glasses, they take my clothes, they take my car keys, and they have me sign a piece of paper. I can't see what I'm signing, Chris, because I don't have glasses on. And then I'm subsequently signed into a crazy house for a year.
Wow.
The people that sign me in are the names of the characters in the book I'm writing. So I was writing a television series, which I refer to as a book. It started out that I was writing, and I had sent that information because I wanted to know what I was writing, because I'm a cipherist. meaning that I write things in code and I break codes, numeric codes. So you can send me a bunch of numeric codes and I can research it and make a message out of it. So I could literally transmit a message. The other way that they use MK Ultras is, let's say you're on a plane. So I flew out to, I was in this band called Way Out West. So I flew out to the Dakotas, and the person that I saw at the airport was one of Prince's bass players. I knew he was a musician because we know these things. It's like you would know another cop, right? You're like, oh, that guy's a cop for sure. So, we ended up getting in an argument over they call it the captain's closet, because I had one of those big Mac classics. It's like huge. Okay, it looks like a small
Right.
television set with a glass case, and there's no way I'm putting that in the luggage thing because I'm going to get it back in pieces. So it was a carry-on for me, and he carried his axe on his bass. And so we get in an argument about it, and then I'm sitting down, and he sits down next to me. You have to have your seats picked out, right? Before you get on the flight. Then I'm thinking, well, I'm not talking to this person. And then he says to me a code that I always say. I always say Vegas is the modern day Sodom and Gomorrah. And he says that to me. And I look at him and I say, that's really strange because that's what I say. And I've said it for years. This is Prince's bass player. So now and he's had many bass players. So and I didn't even remember this until Prince died and I saw him on an interview. And I was like, he looks the same. It's been like 20 years. He doesn't look like he's changed at all. So what did I say to this guy that was disseminated back to Prince, used as intel? I don't know. If your audience is not familiar with Kathy O'Brien is an MK Ultra. She came forward. She wrote a couple of books with her husband, and she exposed MK Ultra and the presidents. She's a very fabulous individual. She just had a movie out, and she was on our show, The Dark Outpost. She's just an incredible person. When I found out she was coming on, I cried because, I was getting validation. So I started reading a little bit of her book, and in there I was noticing some similarities. So I've been doing these shows for answers for myself, as well as giving people that don't have a voice to talk, and people that do have a voice as well. And
Right.
one of the things I noticed was she was married, I think November 22nd, 1981. And I was married November 22nd, 1983, I believe it was. I'm still foggy on the date. I have to look it up because they erased me. And then they changed the date. I know I was married on Thanksgiving because I made a Thanksgiving turkey. My husband said, hey, I found somebody to marry us. We had already done the blood tests, and he took me down to a place in Balboa. It's actually Balboa, Newport Beach, where you could see the carousel from there. And we were married on Thanksgiving. I came back and I said, I will always be thankful I married you on Thanksgiving. Well, when I moved to Texas, I had to get all my paperwork from my prior marriages and everything. And it said I was married on November 25th. So I contacted the lady that married us. She's like, how did you find me? I said, well, that's what I do. Being married to a cop, I already had those skills, right? Before I married him.
Right.
That's why they put him with me as a handler. And so she tells me, well, I wouldn't have married you on Thanksgiving. I was in da-da-da-da, and I don't remember you, and I've married over 3,000 people, da-da-da-da. Then she calls me back after I look up the church that I was married under, which was the Universal Life Church, which its HQ is in Modesto, creepy Modesto. And I believe it's a front for the Church of Satan. Lady Gaga's a member. Just a lot of Stephen Colbert, Rick Branson. They're all. Now, if you wanted to marry somebody, you don't have to go through this church to get a membership to marry somebody. If you wanted to marry somebody, you just go down to your local county courthouse, pay $50, and then you can marry that person. You don't have to be a minister or anything like that. So it's my assertion, in my opinion, that this is a cover for the Church of Satan, because they have Wiccans, etc. witches and warlocks. So they say, well, anybody can get this license. But I believe that person that married me, because I'm now thinking, is that some kind of a high satanic holiday? They killed JFK on November 22nd, 1963. So, why was Kathy O'Brien married on that day? Why was I married on that day? Kathy's 1 year older than me. She was born in 1957. I'm born in 1958, August 11th. So when I start researching, because I know I'm going to, because they know me, because they've known me since I was a child, and they know I ask questions, and they know that I only want the truth. And if they lie to me, I'm done.
Right.
And so I start researching. August 11th, 1958, I'm born in Hollywood, Florida. Hollywood, Florida was made from Hollywood, California for the same purposes, for pornography, for lifestyles of the rich and famous coming from New York, coming down to Florida. It was a prolific drug and party town because of its location. It's a peninsula located 90 miles from Cuba. And then also it has a lot of inlets and coves in which drug trafficking and covert activities can happen. They were training CIA in the Everglades. And so when I started getting my memory back and I started writing Bradford and Valentine, I was researching everything. I had like 2 computers going and the television and my phone, right? Just sucking everything in, and then researching post-traumatic stress disorder, how it happened, how the Army did it, researching psychopaths, just literally going back, trying to regain memories as to why I had no memories at all. I couldn't remember anything 5 minutes at a time. I was literally obliterated. Had been walking on a walker in adult diapers because I was so drugged. I was also told if I didn't take these drugs that I would die. That's what my doctors told me. You will die. You will be in excruciating pain, which I already was in excruciating pain. But everything that they gave me, what made me worse. The reason why the antidepressants didn't work was because I wasn't depressed. I was with a psychopath.
Right. Right.
So, how it got fixed. I left the psychopath. I didn't need I'm not depressed. I'm a very happy person by nature. Even though all the things that have happened to me, I'm still a person who loves God, who loves people, who loves life, and who loves truth, justice, and righteousness. That's who I am. That's who I've always been. I suppose that's a threat to national security because
Oh,
they know that
absolutely.
they know that you're going to come forward and you're going to start exposing things. That's a threat. So I
Yeah.
became a threat to national security, which was why they facilitated my capture, so to speak. And, how crafted was that they checked me in? My character in Bradford and Valentine is Brad Bradford. He's an FBI agent. His best friend is Thaddeus Jones, which I didn't realize that I was writing in code because Carl Thaddeus Mengele is Joseph Mengele's brother and father.
Right.
So, for the people who don't know who Joseph Mengele is, Joseph Mengele was Hitler's scientist. That's my actual family. That's what I found out. Started
Oh,
asking
wow.
questions about my agent, and I said, "Why does John look like Joseph Mengele? Why do I look like Irene Schoenbein, who married Joseph Mengele? Why does my murdered brother David look like Rolf, their son?" And every time I see Rolf, I cry because David was American, Rolf is German. Rolf is like in his 70s, but did they clone Rolf and make my brother David? I don't know, right? I don't know what happened. So, and there are things I cannot prove. So I can just tell you my conjecture through my research, which is ongoing. It started in 2016 when I left my husband 2015. I started waking up 2016 in March. I left him. And then subsequently, I got thrown back into uh, being an asset again. And I have nice assets. and, and I got thrown back in. And then I started talking to my handlers again. So when I'm in Illinois, And I find this guy on the dating app, Alan Gressick, and then I go down to see him. This was September 15th, 2016. It goes into September 16th because when you're gigging, you start at like 9 or 8, and then it goes to 1:45 the next. So it's the next day. So when I'm walking into this venue, and I'm thinking, what? I just learned how to walk and talk again. I was practicing in high heels, Chris, because I'd been on a walker. So I threw all my high heels out, right? So I'm learning. I'm walking in high heels, looking okay. I walk into a venue. When I go in, there's a camera on the sidewalk, and it looks like Secret Service. And I'm the only one there. And I know I'm being filmed. They're filming people going in and out. So I'm looking around. So I go in. The place is jam packed, and I'm thinking. I asked somebody, "Is this normal for a swing band?" And they're like, "Oh, well, the mayor's here." I'm like, "The mayor of what?" Like the mayor of Ronald McDonald Land. I'm making jokes, right? They're like, "No, the mayor's here. The mayor of Chicago." I'm like, "Seriously?" So the mayor of Chicago came to see my date. So then I'm thrown into the limelight, and Alan says, "Hey, come in here and take a picture with the mayor." But that wasn't the mayor. It was somebody else saying he was the mayor. He was the mayor of Ronald McDonald Land, I'm sure. And so I start yelling at Alan. I say, "Alan, you could have told me that the mayor was going to be here." As we're walking out with the mayor and somebody else. And he says, "Well, that's not all." And I said, "What's not all?" And he says, "Well, the mayor of London's here." I say, "The mayor of London and the mayor of Chicago are here to see you." First of all, I said, I didn't even know London had a mayor. I just thought they had a queen. Right? That's how ignorant I was politically. That was Sadat Khan. So the night that I was there, I was filmed at that venue with Alan and with the Mayor Emanuel, Mayor Emanuel was the chief of staff for Obama, President Obama.
Oh, wow.
Okay. I don't know who any of these people are, but when I get home, I'm angry. And my brother Rob is like, "Why are you angry?" And I'm like, "Well, this is the first time I ever stepped out. I don't want my picture splashed all over the paper." He's like, "Well, we know the mayors and stuff. What's your problem?" But I'm angry for some reason. Now, later on, I find out why I'm angry, because I don't know who any of these people are, but I'm filmed with them. And somebody has pictures of me with Alan. Later on, through my research, I find out that Alan is, he's done an interview with a jazz magazine. He's a very sweet person. And in 2019, and in there, he has a picture with the former prime minister of England, John Major, who's come to see him twice with Scotland Yard. I'm still like, what? And so the reason that I started, which it's not even, I don't make money. I do what I do for free. There's a lot of homeless people out there that need assistance, that need a voice. And so Alan had asked me to be his manager. And so I asked God, what should I call this? He says, call it Shepard Entertainment Endeavors. I was like, I like that. The acronym is C. And later on, when I go back, because I do see, right? Because I've seen my whole life, but they've lied to me and said, no, you don't. You're crazy if you think that you can actually telepathically communicate with people and that future events. You are crazy, right? That's not true. That's a lie. And so when I go back, but they put me back in play again, then I start talking to my first handler, Darrell, and then I start talking to John, who I hadn't talked to in many years. I just continued. I quit working for him, and I just continued to agent myself, and I work a day gig and a night gig, and go to school and raise my husband's kids on the weekends and holidays. Little industrious. And so when I start C, and then they make me homeless, I go back to Darrell. Darrell says, "Hey, I'd like to see you." And I haven't talked to him in 40 years. I spent 40 days and 40 nights in the desert with a Satan. And like I say, he's not the Satan, but he's a Satan. And And during that time, I don't know that he even knows John, but eventually I figured out that they know one another. And I had sent an email to John and said, hey, John, I talked to him when I was in Illinois, because I said, I have this client that wants me to represent him, and he's a little difficult, and I maybe need your help. And I even told Alan, I don't want to pull that rabbit out of the hat. That's the way I refer to it as. I don't want to pull that rabbit out of the hat. And when I'm at Willow Creek Church, it's a Saturday, and I'm trying to put together something so I can make a little bit of money. And I say to John, I'm working. It's a Saturday, and I was taking pictures. They were doing a stage production, and so I would be in called their technical rehearsals, pre-production rehearsals. So I'd be like sitting in the audience in this empty church watching the pre-production tech rehearsals. They had this tech rehearsal where Jesus is in a jail, right? So I snap a picture of the jail and I send it to one of my friends. He's like, what is this? Thinking, am I telling him that he's going to jail? And then I send one to John and I say, yeah, they're going to put Jesus in jail. And I say, I'm working. I say, you're, wealthy. You don't have to work. And I didn't know at the time his clients either. I hadn't researched him. And he says, well, I'm in the office. I'm like, really? I go, you're the only one that understands me. And so he sends me this thing and he says he's paying $3,000 for this girl to do one song. Now, when I was under his employ, he was giving me $600 a week, right? Making about, he books Madonna and a lot of other people, but like he'll book her out at 2 million and then he'll get $1 million, right? He gets half of a corporate gig. So while he's living in 10,500 square foot home and sleeping with me, by the way, he's paying me $600 a week. I went bankrupt after his employ. So I say, I'm looking at it, and he's paying $3,000 to this girl to sing one song. But he felt important enough to tell me. The song is Jefferson Airplane's White Rabbit.
White rabbit.
Mm-hmm. What is a white rabbit? So let's review this for your audience who doesn't know. White rabbit is you follow the white rabbit down the rabbit hole. That's Alice in Wonderland programming. It's also the symbol for adrenochrome, which is the blood that they're getting from children who are living in fear, which I think a lot of these psyops that are being engendered right now are to put the entire world in a perpetual state of fear, so that you are fearful that you will not have water. You're fearful you will not have food, which these are real things as well. I'm not saying don't be afraid. I'm just saying don't live in perpetual fear. And then also World War III, which in my estimation has already happened. We've already interceded in the footsteps of World War III in Ukraine and Russia. This is what they want. This is what NATO wants. This is my opinion. Okay. So, there are others who may counter that, which is fine. But in America, as far as I know, we're allowed to have our opinions. Unfortunately, though, many people that have these opinions are being locked up. They're saying that they're crazy. In Canada, they're saying that if you did not take the COVID shot, that you're mentally ill, and they have the right to incarcerate you in a mental institution. And this is a proposition that they're holding throughout the world in other countries. You don't think they're going to do that here, or that they've already done that here? Because I'm here to tell you that there's a covert faction that is involved in our governance and the governance of the world. It's called the New World Order. And this is one of the things that I research. Joseph Mengele was the doctor. If you don't know who he is, please research him. He was the doctor for Adolf Hitler. When I found out, when I got locked up in that crazy house for a year, before it happened, I was asked, do you want to end up like Julian Assange and Snowden? And I was like, what? Why would I end up like Julian Assange and Snowden? Now, as you know, Assange was framed for rape, and he was also when I started writing Bradford and Valentine. Okay, it was Bradford's an FBI agent. His best friend is Thaddeus Jones. I didn't realize that it was Carl Thaddeus Mengele that I was actually writing about. And then my character, I separated into 3 characters. Laura Adora Valentine is a DEA agent. She has a white shepherd named Cooper. I wrote a backstory for Cooper. He had litters of puppies with 2 other dogs. He likes drinking cappuccino and sparkling water, which he retrieves from the refrigerator. He's her best friend. They live on a houseboat. Okay, it took me a year, Chris, to write the backstory for everybody. I felt like I was Mario Puzo writing the characters for The Godfather. I even downloaded all of the characters from the Gambino family because they were going to be working for a cartel, which I didn't want to use the Mengele cartel because I thought I'm going to get killed, right?
Yeah.
Not knowing who I was. So I thought I was making up a name called the Magdalena cartel, but everything I wrote about is extremely important. There was a UFO crash in Magdalena, New Mexico. It was either prior to or adjacent to Roswell. So,
Prior.
remember? Prior. Okay. Um, so I mean, I'm literally like coding because I was in these secret projects and it was unbeknownst even to me. There's a guy named James Cosbolt, Casbolt. Look him up for your audience. James Cosbolt is a super soldier. He and Max Spears knew one another very well. Max Spears is Spiers. James wrote a book called Agent Buried Alive. I wish I had freaking read his book before I got locked up in the crazy house because he talks about how they will electronically trigger you on your devices. Right? But I didn't know any of this stuff, and I didn't understand why they were saying you could end up, do you want to end up like Snowden and Assange? So Snowden ends up, one of my characters, he was from, he ends up working with the Magdalena cartel, but he's from, oh gosh, um, it's where Snowden and Julian Assange uh, sought asylum. Okay, and Assange ended up at the embassy in England for it. I'm trying to remember. It's a South American country. Do you know?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what the name of it was? The South American country that he was going to?
No, I know what you're talking about.
Let me just see the embassy that he was at. Anyway, so I wrote about that particular one of my characters was from Esmeralda. It's escaping me right now. Let me see if I can find it. Anyway, so that's where both Snowden and Assange were headed for sanctuary. Snowden ends up in Russia, Assange at Ecuador. Snowden ends up at the Ecuadorian embassy in London. Okay. My character is from Esmeralda, Ecuador. All right. I think I knew Assange also when he was a child. I'm 13 years older than him. And at one point, my handler, Darrell, comes to New York because I went to New York University. I studied acting there. He comes to New York for Thanksgiving, right? Damn. I just figured that out right now. And he takes me to a hunting lodge. And I remember drinking something and I lost 5 days.
Oh, wow.
I drank something in front of the fireplace. I lost 5 days. It was a hunting lodge, and it was in the Catskills. When I went back to see him after 40 days and 40 nights, I talked about a lot of stuff. He said, "Do you remember going to the hunting lodge in the Catskills?" I was like, "No, I just remember drinking something in front of the fireplace, right?" So when I start researching Julian Assange, because they said, "Do you want to end up like Assange and Snowden?" Right? I find out that Julian Assange's mother married somebody from the Anne Hamilton Burns family. Anne Hamilton Burns was a cultist. She tortured the children. Every time I look at Julian Assange, I was like, why does he look like one of the children of the corn? Okay. She moved her venue. I was in NYU 78, 79. She moved her venue. They said in 79, but it was 78, 79 to the Catskills. And that about in 79, I think Julian Assange's mother divorces his father because I think she was having an affair with this guy from the Anne Hamilton Burn cult. Okay. I think Julian Assange was there as a child and we were hunted. Can I prove any of this? Absolutely not. Just like in conspiracy theory, when Alice asked Jerry, can you prove any of this? He says, well, no. A good conspiracy theory, if you can prove it, they must have done something wrong. And she says, they who they? And he says, well, the 3-lettered agencies like the CIA, the NSA, the FBI. He says, and what's frightening is that in some cases they are working together with one another, but they're actually opposing forces and they're working against one another. So, it's very, if you can prove it, they've done something wrong, right? Because the CIA leaves no DNA at the crime scene but yours, which they planted. And I use movies a lot to illustrate my points because movies are real. And I speak on the military industrial entertainment complex because I was in it for half a century, 50 years. In the movie Red, it starts off with one of the guys that's going to pursue Bruce Willis's character, Moses. And Bruce Willis's character is a retired CIA agent. So red means retired, extremely dangerous. Because they've got all these skills, not just skills in martial arts, but skills in somewhat like yourself, right? You're trained as a trained observer. You're trained to look, watch. You're trained to interrogate maybe in a soft way so that you're not with a big stick, trying to beat interrogation. Right. You're trained in some psychological operations. You're trained in knowledge of psychopaths and to protect yourself, and how you're trained in weaponry. Tactical training, right? You're training all these things. So that's what retired extremely dangerous means. This guy was former CIA. So they send a guy to him, a younger guy, to assassinate him. They send a wet team to his house, and they have these guns where they literally shred the house. The house just falls down into a pile. But he's already taken the wet team out because he's retired extremely dangerous. And in there, they have the person that's coming after him at a crime scene. The guys, and this would be a red tie suicide if you don't know what that is. I know I'm throwing a lot of terms at people, but, please research this, and I'll give you my phone number if you have any questions about anything about MKUltra or whatever. So the guy's on a chair with Velcro cuffs, and he's got a noose around his neck. And this guy from the CIA is talking to his wife on the phone. He says, "Okay, so you want 3% milk, honey?" She says, "Yes." And then he's planting hairs and photos, planting the DNA evidence there so that they can create their scenario and their story. And then the guy says, "Don't you know I am? I've got lots of money." He's like, "I know who you are." He kicks him off the chair. The guy hangs, and then he takes the Velcro cuffs off. So he red tie suicided himself because he didn't actually kill himself. So when you see people like John McAfee, who tattoos a thing on there with a cash sign and says whacked, he says, "I'm not suicidal. I'm not going to kill himself. I'm not going to kill myself." He was whacked in prison. His wife is on our show. We're going to be dark on Monday. With Dave's going to be late, but she was due to be on the show. I love her. She's an amazing, amazing woman, Janice McAfee. And so I want her to be a regular on the show on Mondays. We're on Rumble Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. in the morning till 1 p.m. in the afternoon. That's Central Standard Time. Eastern Standard Time is 10 to 2. Pacific Time is 2 hours before that. So for 9, 8, it's 7 to 8, 9, 10, 11, 7 to 11, 7-Eleven in Cali, California, which I lived in for about 38 years. And I toured as a singer. So, I mean, that was my craft. That was my trade. So in my research, as I'm researching, I'm gaining memories and I'm gaining answers, and I'm talking to people all over the world, and they're telling me their stories. And when they're telling me their stories, it's awakening the actual historical events within my life. And I'm putting the puzzle pieces together. So that makes sense now. I didn't understand it at the time, but now it makes sense.
That's crazy.
So I was involved in a project which was called Project Genesis, Subproject Eve, which is a cloning project. Now, the other day, let's just throw some current events in there. Kanye West got sanctioned on Twitter. He's not kicked off, just sanctioned for 12 hours. He posted a picture of a swastika. Well, first he posted a picture of a fat Elon Musk on Aries yacht. It looked very white. He looked not very white. He looked very white. I am white, but he looked like, oh my God, put your sunglasses on white. And so he posted this picture of Elon Musk, and they were good friends. And that wasn't why he got sanctioned on Twitter. He posted a picture of a Star of David with a Nazi symbol within it. And he also just got off Alex Jones, the Nazi symbol within it. And so he posted this picture of Elon Musk, and they were good friends. And that wasn't why he got sanctioned on Twitter. He posted a picture of a Star of David with a Nazi symbol within it. And he also just got off Alex Jones, saying, "I love Hitler," and you're like, "Holy crapola, what?" If you didn't drop off the deep end before, and he's wearing a Balenciaga face mask, which is BDSM, so he never takes the face mask off. One wonders, how do you drink water in that thing? Do you have to clean it like afterwards? I don't know. There's no mouth hole. Okay. And he's just spewing all these different ideologies. Anybody that gets back, anybody that wanted to support him after this is just like, no, man. Sorry. So,
I mean, once you get the reputation in this field, you're done with.
when you start supporting Hitler, especially as a black man, holy shite. Okay.
Yeah.
But that symbol that he posted, it's actually from the Raelian movement. The Raelians started Clonade. That's what he posted. Nobody
Well,
ever
from
said
my
what it was.
understanding, and I don't have the facts on it, that the aliens have been trying that for years.
Yeah, they gave us the technology. They gave Hitler the technology. Maybe that's why he liked Hitler. Also, he said he liked the outfits. Really? He liked the designers that made the outfits. Also, Adidas, which was one of the brands that supported him, that he worked through for his shoes. I researched that on the air because I do a lot of research while I'm just on the air. While we're talking with the co-host, we're able to do research. Adidas, the guy's name was Addy for his name, which was Adolf, and it was like Kessler or Kessler or something like that. His last name. Something like that, Kessler, or I'd have to look it up just to make sure. But he and his brothers they worked with Hitler, they worked with Franco, and they joined the Nazi Party. Is this why Kanye likes Hitler? I don't know why anybody, would like Hitler. My family was Hitler. I found out my mom was a Hitler baby. And she worked in MKUltra. My mother was gay, so why did she marry my father, who was in Germany in the war twice? He was in Korea and then in in World War II, he was stationed in Germany. So what were they using him for? What MKUltra projects? Why did he choose my mother? What did my mother do for MKUltra? Because I found out when I was locked up in the crazy house that movies are real, and I found out that there's a series on Netflix. It's called Stranger Things. And there's a character there named 11. And that's actually me. And when I found out, I was in the crazy house and I was like, maybe it's good that I'm here because I should be having a mental breakdown, but I'm not. And I'm not on drugs. And they drugged me too much. They took my DNA. I found out that they took my ovum and my fetuses. They made babies and clones from my DNA. And here's the thing. It didn't just happen to Penny Shepard. It happened to millions and millions of people out there. Some actually abducted by alien factions, but some actually abducted by our genuine military that's working in conjunction with the alien factions. Because there was a deal made way back in the Wayback Machine. I think it was Laura Eisenhower's great grandfather, Dwight Eisenhower, who made that deal with the extraterrestrials and was more than likely deceived. And the deal allegedly was, hey, we'll let you take a couple of our people in exchange for some advanced technology, which you know what? Hitler made that deal. And they did kill millions of people, but it's not, they focused it on a Jewish agenda, but in fact, it was not just Jews that were killed. It was thousands of Polish people, thousands of French people, thousands of Americans, anybody that went against their agenda, which is the New World Order agenda. So the Holocaust is still going on. World War III never ended. We're now in World War II never ended. We're in the throes of World War III, which you can see with Russia, right? With Russia and Ukraine. We're on the precipice of it. We're making alliances. We're on the chessboard right now, making alliances for World War III, which in my assertion will happen. So I say, don't be afraid, research, be prepared. You know, don't be running around with a chicken, like a chicken with your head cut off. Don't my suggestion, do not go out and cause any civil unrest. Don't do it. Don't be out there and this is just my opinion, because if you're at these protest marches, look what happened at January 6th. There were some innocent people that got hurt, and some people that are in jail because they went there because they were patriots of the United States of America,
Uh,
and some facing 30 years for treason. And don't believe all the stories that you're hearing in mainstream media either. Try to go to those
yeah.
people that are actually that were there, that are telling their stories. Listen to what they're saying and give them credo to what they're saying, and know that the mainstream media who told you that Hunter Biden's laptop was a psyop and it was Russian disinformation, and the FBI themselves held it back because the president of the United States, the current president of the United States, he was the vice president under Obama. And I work with Megan Walsh, the daughter of John Walsh, and John Walsh has known all of the presidents since Reagan. He presented his daughter to Reagan when she was like 2 months old, after his son Adam Walsh had been kidnapped and beheaded. I'm still researching that, and I don't believe the contrived narrative on that. There are people that have written books on it. They've been researching it for 40 years. So I tell people, here's what you do in order to try to figure out what's true and what's not. Do your best research, but look at multiple sources. Look at look at both sides, weigh both sides. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you have to follow the trail.
Yes. I mean, you're a detective.
Mm-hmm.
So you know what it takes to actually try to figure out who's lying here, who's telling the truth. And, they can't do all lies. So they're going to throw in a little partial truth in there to throw your way. But as soon as you hit one lie, you're like, all right, I'm on alert because they just lied to me. So what else are they going to lie about? That was the premise of my life. And I remember when I was with John, he lied about something that was insignificant. And I even asked him at that time, are you a psychopath? Because this is an insignificant thing that you're lying about. So then everything else after that lay in question. If you're going to lie about something insignificant, what else are you lying about?
I mean, you're right, and that's the problem with the government and society today. It really is.
We're being fed narratives. Even my sister Susie, I call her my sister. She's my best friend. She said she read the Bible 7 times, and she questions things in the Bible. She says there's missing books. There's other texts she's read. She says a vociferous reader, and she questions. If you don't question, then that means you're going along with the mainstream narrative. Okay, he who controls the narrative controls the world. So my purpose is to get people to investigate their lives. If you want to find out more about me, I have a blog. It's my name, Shepard. Penny. I go by Penny L.A. Shepard. Those are my middle initials. There's lots of Penny Shepards, but not a lot of Penny L.A. Shepards.
Right.
My blog spot is Shepard, Shepard, like she is paired. She paired. There's not an extra H in there. She paired. And I even asked that when I was writing Bradford and Valentine, and I was in Branson. And I found there was a Bradford Inn, and I was like, there was a Temptation in my car from the group Temptations. It's a long story. But anyway, I said, hey, turn in there. And he said, why? And I said, because that's the name of my book, Bradford and Valentine. And I turned in there and I asked when I walked in, they go, can we help you? And I'm looking around and I say, is Brad here? Because it's my character, right? And they're like, no, we don't have a Brad working here. So I tell them I'm writing this book, which is a television series. Can I write there? And they say, yes. And I say, what is the premise of the Bradford Inn? And she says, the Bradford pear tree. So I start thinking like I'm writing Pelican Brief, right? All over again. I got to do a study on what the Bradford pear tree is. And I say out loud, am I paired with my agent? And then I find out I indeed am paired with my agent because he's my brother who I didn't know was my brother until I was like 58, 59. And then my first husband said, yes, he's your biological brother. And then he died of a heart attack 3 weeks later. Right? Yeah. I see you just shaking your head going, what the hell, Penny?
I mean, that's a lot of information.
It is. You can
You
have me
know,
back.
I mean, people are probably sitting there going, "Nah, this is not happening," and people have to realize it does happen.
Yes.
And just like I talked on your last show, Dark Outpost, men in black don't show up on your doorstep wearing hats in black and clothes in black. I mean, they show up as a regular person.
They also do show up in black hats, and they
Well, they
that was
still do?
that was their actual attire in the Wayback Machine because everybody wore suits.
Right.
So they would wear the skinny black ties. I remember dressing my husband up like that. My first husband, Steve Zenos, I dressed him up with a skinny black tie because I'd seen them before. So when we go out, I dress him up with a skinny black tie, a white shirt, black pants, black shoes, black jacket. So they actually do exist. But yes, you're right. They also show up as your handlers that are your boyfriends, and then you marry your handlers because uh, they're going to watch you for the remainder of your marriage. There's a movie. It was by John Cusack. It's not actually a movie. It's a series um, on Amazon. Let me see if I can find it because I wrote a chapter on it. If you get a chance, I urge you to just go read my blog. I have 36 chapters. I need to write the 36th one because I've been busy. And this is just my research. I've got cloning Michael Jackson, River Phoenix. I wrote about him twice. Rapper Travis Scott, war games. Pope declares that we are in World War III. I have a cryptographic transmission in which you can see how I cipher things. I have a green mind script, which the green mind script shows you who I am in a timeline with MKUltra and the real 11. I am the real 11 depicted in Stranger Things, but it shows you my timeline and their timeline. I wrote about a Little Nas Satan shoes, and there's this movie in chapter 28 I discussed. It's called Amazon's. Again, it's not a movie; it's a series. It's called Utopia, Utopia, with John Cusack. When I saw that, I started crying, and I'd been talking with David Zublik, who is the Dark Outpost for a couple of years before he asked me to be his executive producer, and I cried. I said, I think this is actually about my brother John because I found out that my brother John is also a virologist. And if you don't know what that is, it's a person that studies viruses because I found a paper under one of his under one of his MKAs, under one of his AKAs that was a virologist, a paper on virology. He works in deep underground military bases, which are called DUMBs. And Elon Musk funded one of his movies. He represents Madonna, Lady Gaga, Katy Perry, Jay-Z, Beyonce, Kanye West, Taylor Swift, Jay Leno, Whoopi Goldberg, Steve Martin.
Wow, that's impressive.
So if you want to get in touch with me, my phone number is area code 619-779-9771. Please text my phone. I won't answer unless you're in my contacts. Say who you are. If you have a question about MK Ultra or you're a whistleblower and you think you might want to be on the Dark Outpost, we're on Rumble. You can text my phone. You can also reach me at penny@darkoutpost.com. And I will respond to you. I usually have my phone in my hand. So, I don't know how long your shows go, but we're at an hour now. Do we have more
No,
time?
I'm just looking at my board and thinking about all your names and your encounters and stuff, and it's just amazing, It's you talk to so many people and you encounter somebody like you that
Yes.
has all these situations and encounters. It's just mind blowing.
Yes.
It
And I
really
mean,
is.
we're talking about major individuals. These are if you had one person saying there was a new world order or one person saying that they're drinking adrenochrome and they're eating babies, You might say, well, maybe that person's a little off or they're a little crazy. When you have thousands upon thousands of people telling you this and you're seeing things in front of your face right now, like Balenciaga, you're seeing it. You're seeing that they're pictures of children in blood with severed arms, pictures of children with BDSM teddy bears that they're literally selling. You see on the mainstream media, I entreat you to go and look for Balenciaga and Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens. And guess what? Candace Owens, I'm just an audience member. She doesn't know me. For years, I've been tweeting her since 2019 and saying, not tweeting her and sending stuff like on her live shows, because you can participate in the audience, saying, please research MK Ultra. Please research MK Ultra. Since 2019. She just did a show on Kanye West and his handler, Harley Pasternak. Harley Pasternak worked with the DOD on creating psyops and drugging people. So in order to be a sniper, our friend who was murdered, Chet Swift, was murdered on a ranch. He was a sniper in under the employ of the U.S. Air Force from 1979 or 73 to 93. 73 to 20 years. He ran recon, Southeast Asia. He trained cadaver dogs and DEA dogs. He worked with the DEA. He also at one point became a mercenary, which he wasn't proud about that. He was security forces for the Queen of England, for Nixon. I've got a picture of him in front of Nixon's plane. For Chancellor Cole. I have his papers. So I have his actual, papers in which they were reviewing him. His superiors were reviewing him, giving him. So this isn't idle gossip. I actually have his papers. For Chancellor Cole, who was Chancellor of Germany at one point, for Princess Margaret. So, I mean, this isn't idle. You said he also worked security for Gleason, which that concerned me because Jackie Gleason was not a very good man. And he lived about 16 minutes from me the whole time that I lived in Florida. And I auditioned for the June Taylor Dancers, which had then been dissipated. But he ran a show from some of his shows he ran from the Fontainebleau and some from the Miami Convention Center. In which he would open his show and say, Miami Beach, the greatest audience in the world. He was an alcoholic and a Satanist, and he also worked covert for the CIA, refuting UFO productions. He had a home in New York that looked like a mothership. So I wondered, did he kidnap children, or did they bring children to his home and then drug them? And they thought they were on a ship. That's another possibility, right? So if you don't know anything about Jackie Gleason, please look him up. So they had me audition for the June Taylor Dances because Jackie Gleason married June Taylor's sister and lived in Fort Lauderdale. And I live with Darrell in Fort Lauderdale. So I auditioned for the June Taylor Dancers. I was told to audition for them, but I was not a dancer. I was a singer. And they had me sing a weirdo song, which they're like, hey, do you know this song? And no one would ever ask you if you knew that song. It was a Barbra Streisand song, and it was called The Minute Waltz. Now, The Minute Waltz is, it's like, I don't know who actually created it. It was like a minuet, but they put words to it, and it's very fast. And so it took me like 6 months to learn that song. But they asked me off the cuff, do you know this song? And I'm like, I look at my pianist, and I'm like, do I know that song, Jeff? Jeff's like, yeah, I think you do, right? How would they know that I knew that song? And it's a song about time. So were they telling me then that I was in a time travel program? The joke's on me, right? Because I don't understand what the hell they're talking about. And I'm a singer. I'm not a dancer. So why would I be auditioning for the June Taylor Dancers? Because I'm a singer. I mean, I'd taken ballet a bunch of times. They erased me so many times. Not even kidding. I had to take tap and ballet like 5 different times in different states because I couldn't remember anything. I must have learned the shuffle ball change about 5 billion times. It's just a very easy jazz tap move because they kept erasing me. And by erasing, I mean they erase your memory. And it can be done in many ways. We were talking about the Men in Black. The neuralizer is real. Okay. What is the new implant that Elon Musk has? What's the name of his company? Neuralink. And he is not a good man. So I would entreat you to research Neuralink because he's taken monkeys and he's had this glue that he used to keep the implants intact. He creates implants in which he wants to create a hive mind so that you don't need a phone anymore. Hey, don't worry about losing your phone. It's implanted in your head. Ooh, sounds like a good idea to me. Don't worry about losing your keys because you can just unlock your door with your mind, right? And then in the meantime, we're going to download commercials and shit into your head. And then we're also going to tell you, hey, we need an assassin for tonight. So we'd like you to come and kill the president. Would you mind doing that? Seriously.
Oh Lord, we're on the FBI CIA list now.
We already were. You were on the
We
CIA
always
list
been.
before I ever came on and when you came on my show.
Let's see. Good morning, Grizzly. Hey, Penny. They killed Max, Ecuador, training in Astro. Well, it's sad because you hit a lot of good points, and a lot of people do not want to believe. They want to call us crazy or nuts and conspiracy theories and stuff
I'm
like
so
that.
far
But,
away from the crazy or nuts. Ask me if I even care because I don't.
well, I don't either.
You're going to have to say that 5 million people that have that share the same cosmography as us are all crazy.
Oh, that's
How,
right.
how can so many whistleblowers be schizophrenic?
Well, and that's when it goes back to my psychology when I was having problems with it, taking it, because I was telling my professor, look, people do see things, people do talk to people do see people dead, they communicate, and all that schizophrenic. No, think about it. Your job is to grab a person, describe a person, identify their diagnosis, and prescribe medicine and send them out the door.
Yes, you're also talking about the fact that you have MKUltra doctors that are complicit in the drugging and raping and murdering of individuals that are whistleblowers. So they throw you in a crazy house, they restrain you, they drug you to make you look like you're crazy when you're not. They can cause a psychotic break. They can also cause a psychotic break with the technology, which is voice to skull, which now they can initiate literally through your phone, through 5G. They've already been doing it. Direct energy weapons are not a figment of anyone's imagination. They are real. The military has used these weapons. HARP is real. If you don't know what that is, Google it. It's a weather program. They can indeed manipulate the weather. What you're seeing in Hollywood in these movies, because Hollywood is predicated, every Hollywood office and writers group has CIA liaisons, and they may not even know that the CIA liaisons are in there, and they're offering up suggestions that maybe they've gotten from their CIA contacts in which information you can speak about and which you can't. And they make it appear that this technology, this advanced technology that they're availed to, which I believe is 1,000 years ahead of us, isn't real, and that if you think that movies are real, well, then you're crackers. When in fact they are utilizing the military, I call it the military industrial entertainment complex. And it works in conjunction with the military industrial complex. They are synonymous with one another. One cannot function without the other. One is a propagandist machine, and they also hide and code within movies MK Ultra triggers. And I help people deprogram themselves because I do not suggest that you go to a psychiatrist or psychologist. That's my opinion. I'm not saying don't go to one. I'm not saying don't listen to them. I'm saying for myself and my experience has been exceedingly bad because all of the people that were in my life were MK Ultra doctors. I found out my first husband, Steve Zenos, his family. He was a psychologist. He has his MA in psychology. He wasn't a practicing psychologist, but at one point he did practice counseling. He learned neuro-linguistic programming language, which is the most potent form of hypnosis that exists. His parents were
NLP.
his parents were MFCCs, marriage, family, crisis counselors. They had been in the business for 38 years, and they counseled a lot of people, and they were extremely evil individuals, and they were in Hollywood. Steve's father was a session player. He was a horn player. He toured in jazz groups, and he was in the military. And he also went to Hollywood High. So Hollywood High is like a CIA training ground, an MKUltra and CIA training ground. So they're going to train you because they're going to use you as a brand, or they're going to use you as a person to control their brands. And by the way, the NSA permits you to go into a court of law and lie. So under the grounds of national security. So if you're an expert witness, you can actually expertly go in there, use your expert witness testimony, and you can lie in there. Now, am I saying that happens all the time? No, I'm not. But I am saying there are people within these court systems that under national security, they are permitted to lie, because they're saying we can't release this information on the grounds of national security. They can frame you under national security. They can lie about you. They can throw you in jail. They can throw you in a crazy house. They can pretty much say whatever they want, because these individuals are embedded in every institution. They're embedded in police forces, in sheriffs, in our governance, in our house, our political house of representatives. There are some very benevolent people that are representing you that you have no idea who they are. Please research your people that you have hired to represent you.
They don't. They vote strictly Republican or Democrat.
Yes, and it's not a Republican or Democrat issue. It is a good or bad issue. And so you need to research all these people. Now, I know that they're saying that Democrats are Democrats, which there's a lot of them there, but there's a lot of evil Republicans. Don't just look at, the ticket, look at the individual, and nobody researches. So they're just like, oh, that looks like a good name. I'll vote for that person. Because you don't know, because if you're not political, you don't know. And I wasn't political until I found out who my brother was and what he was involved with. And what got me in trouble was I said, why do you look like Joseph Mengele? And why does my murdered brother David? I didn't even know he knew David. When I first started talking to him again, I said, yeah, I'm going to start writing. I'm going to start writing a blog called See Me Now, because I see you now. But at the time, I really didn't see anything. Now I do. And that's from 5 years of research. And that's why I became an enemy of the state. And, I was sex trafficked out of the last crazy house too. They sent me an individual who was a commander at the DAV in Chicago. And he meets me at a Walmart. Great place to meet, right?
Right.
And just, he's sent there for me. He said he was working for the agency at the time. And then he sex traffics me out of the crazy house. And he tells me that he worked for, he said during the Cold War, he said, I don't know if I told you this, Penny. And I thought when I was talking to him, I thought I was talking to my drummer, George. His name is George. I thought I was talking to George Luna, who was a very good friend of mine, a drummer in a band that I worked with for over 23 years called Backstreet. And so I'm thinking I'm talking to George Luna, and this is a different George. And this George says, hey, did I tell you that I worked at a top secret facility during the Cold War in Heidelberg, Germany, for 2 generals in the cipher department? And my mind is blown, right? I'm like, fuck, what? What did you just say? You what? I said, no, George, I worked with you a long time. You never told me that. That's a new one, because I'd asked George to call me. I think my George Luna, who was the drummer, he had some brain issues. I think he went in for brain surgery after he talked to me.
Man.
And so this George then became a handler of mine, but he was a commander at the DAV in Illinois. And he was also I think he had his federal police license at one point. And he was in the military. And he tells me when he was a child, he had an IQ of 60. And I'm like, how are you zipping up your pants and talking to me with an IQ of 60? Because I was reading an 11th grade level when I was in 3rd grade. And then he tells me about a thing. I say, what happened to me in Alaska? Because John sent me to Alaska, to Kodiak. You can't get off Kodiak. The only way you get off is with a seaplane or a boat. And I was there for 2 months. I said, what happened to me there? Because they took me to the doctor and they said they had some kind of a virus on the island, so I needed to get vaccinated. I passed out and I was unconscious for 20 minutes. And he says, look up pluripotenti. And I'm like, seriously? I have a very good vocabulary. And I've never heard of that word ever in my life before. I look it up, and it's how they use stem cells to make chimeras and clones.
Really?
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you can look at anything I'm saying. You can say this person's crazy or whatever. It doesn't really matter. I know the truth. I don't need to do a DNA test to know that John is my brother. I know the truth now. And people are like, well, did he know? Yes, he knew. He's known Darrell, who was my first handler, for over 60 years. He's 66 or 67 now.
That's wild.
And when he became my agent, I was like, he looks familiar. Of course he looked familiar because he looked like the brother that I grew up with, David. 6'3", dark hair. David was a towhead when he was younger. But that's why he looked familiar, because he looked like my brother. All my brothers are 6'3", dark hair. Only my brother Rob did not look like anybody in the family. He had black hair, black curly hair. My sister used to say that my mom had an affair with a mailman. But I'm wondering, where did he come from? Because he was born in 52. I was born in 58. And I don't know anything about him, where he was born. Was he born in New York? Where was he born? I don't know anything. My brother John, though, was born in New York in 55. My mother is from New York. I didn't know anything about my mother either. So I entreat everybody to please research your entire family, okay? Because my story is my story, all right? I started this to try and find out what happened to me. And I'm still going to research. I'll be 140 and still recovering memories and still researching and putting pieces together. But I entreat you to research your own family. Research your lineage. There's a lot of people that are on, Q trains and whatever. And I'm not going to say anything negative about that. I'm simply going to say, if it caused you to research, then it was a very good proposition. But if it took you away from your own life and researching your own life, then why don't you add that in there? Because it's not about me. It's not about Chris. It's not about anybody else. It's about you finding out the connections in your family, why maybe you're missing memories in your childhood. That's not normal. One of my bass players told me, I said, "Are you missing any memories?" He's like, "Well, I can't remember anything like before 5." And where he lived was in a city near Long Island where Trump's mother or grandmother died in that city. So I think his father knew Trump's grandmother. I think my grandmother knew Trump's father because she was a singer. So I'm a second generation singer. Everyone in my family is singer. I'm the only one that actually got the craft. So my mom, when I start researching her, I find out she's born in Jamaica, New York, which that's the very first place that Trump's father started building houses. There was nothing there. So he started building in Jamaica, New York, and my mom was born in 1930. So I think my grandma knew Trump's father. Trump's father was a teetotaler, but he was a philanderer. And my grandmother was a singer, and she slept around. Then they moved from there to closer to the city, like to the Bronx, I think. And Trump had his place in the city. And he went to gentleman clubs. My grandmother sung in gentleman clubs.
That's
then I actually end up having family members that are in the Trump administration.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, there's also a thing that they say, well, Trump's a time traveler. And there's this series, you guys should look up. It's called Trackdown. It's episode 30 called The End of the World. A person named Walter Trump comes into the town and says that he can stop the end of the world if they'll just let him build a wall. And it's about the Texas Rangers, Robert, and I'm in Texas, and we're having problems with a Texas Ranger who headed Waco. He was head of Waco during Janet Reno. And so the person that ends up killing this character, Trump, his name's Chet. Chet Swift died on our ranch. He was murdered, shot and beat to death. They tried to kill Susie, my sister, and her son, Joel, but God told me not to get in the truck. So I didn't. For 2 weeks, I wouldn't go anywhere with him. And I had ordered 10 clocks because I was getting calls from Russia, from Ukraine, from, China, whatever. I was getting calls. So I wanted to just look up on the wall and see what time it was. And I had something like 14 clocks, and I had a little office in my closet. So some of those clocks were in there. So I just finished putting 10 clocks on the wall when I got home from shopping, and they had just gone out to dinner. And Susie came running in the house after 10, and Chet had been shot at 10 o'clock. I also got a cipher, which I deciphered. Now, ciphers can be many things. They can be words, anagrams of words. This was numeric. I actually got it off of an Amber Alert. And I went down and I told, at the end of it, it said RN. And I knew it didn't mean nursing. It mean I had to tell Chet this right now. And Chet knew who I was. And I told him what the cipher was. I also said about that time it was maybe June 4th, because June 6th, I think it was, that Trump stood in front of St. John's Church with the Bible where they were breaching the Capitol. I said it wasn't that shit. What I saw was much, much worse. I saw January 6th. I saw a list of people that were involved in a tornado when I was in Branson. And now I thought it was an actual visceral tornado, but it actually was God telling me the tornado about the January 6th breach, because family members were involved in that. And I think I can actually see through there's a thing, people came to me and said, I can see through their eyes. And you're going to think this is crazy. And I'm like, no, I don't think it's crazy, because I was told that I could actually see through John's eyes and through his son Johnny's eyes.
That's crazy.
It's a long journey. I have a lot of information that I'm just retrieving myself. So I try to tell it in a cohesive manner, but it is a lot of information. So I entreat you to take a look at my blog spot, and you can see how I'm researching stuff, and then I interject, hey, this thing's me. Then I go back to the subject. This is what happened to me. And so that's how I'm regaining memories through my writing. So I tell people, you can regain your memories through diligent research, through writing, and through utilizing movies and television series. But turn the captions on, start and stop them, and take pictures, because the way that we record things is like a computer. So we are like a computer, a human computer. We record things in thoughts, in sounds, in smells. A certain smell can bring you back to the first time that you smelled something. So a certain song, you're standing in the room when you first heard the song. When you're watching television programs, they're motion pictures, which is how you record. You record in pictures in a motion when you're looking around the room, motion pictures. So when you're watching these things, memories will come back.
That's true, ladies and gentlemen. You heard from the one and only Penny Shepard from the Dark Outpost. Definitely a wonderful guest on the show today. We'll definitely have her back. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to be on Grizzly's show, all you have to do is email me at grizzlytheparanormal@gmail.com. Once again, that's grizzlytheparanormal@gmail.com. From coast to coast and around the world, It's that time again. I got another live show at 3 p.m. Eastern time. Until then, Penny and everybody, we say goodbye.
Thank you so much. Shepard out.